Not a single jump scare in sight, not a single one. Let's review PuLSe. PuLSe stars Haruhiko Kato, Kamiko Aso, and is directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. What's up, guys? Exciting day because I'm doing a catalog release. I like reaching back and reviewing older films, and this happens to be a JHorror, Japanese horror film from 2001 called PuLSe. Now, I have heard of this movie. This is the first time I've ever seen it. One of my patrons, the Wolfman, who I've reviewed a few things in the past, and he always gives me really interesting things to review. As a matter of fact, I think he had me review Gonzum Haunted Asylum. Correct me if I'm wrong, Wolfman. I can't remember if that was... I think he had me review that one, which... Those guys over there, I think that one's a South Korean film. Those Asians know how to make scary movies, okay? And it seems like, we try to adapt their work so often. And more times than not, we fall flat on our face in terms of recapturing the magic, so to speak, that they do. But PuLSe actually predates movies like Ring, or Ringu, I think it's called over there, and also The Grudge. And those are both Japanese horror films as well. I have not seen the Japanese versions of those movies. I do apologize. I am stupid. I have seen the American versions, which they're okay. I mean, they're nothing special. I've seen PuLSe, the American version from 2006 with Kristen Bell. I don't really remember too much of it at all, and that should tell you how effective that movie was. And maybe that's why I kind of passed over the original, which that's my fault. But I'm so glad Wolfman asked me to review this one. And also just big thank you to all my patrons that constantly request these movies that are sometimes challenging, most of the time extremely interesting. I appreciate that just because I like going outside of my quote-unquote comfort zone, even though I love all different types of horror. I like foreign horror. Italian horror, that's my genre right now. Like, I freaking love that stuff. So we're going to get into PuLSe, though. 2001, this movie came out 22 years ago. And when you watch it, it's timeless. If somebody told me this movie came out 2 years ago and I'd never even heard of the movie PuLSe, I would believe them. It just has a universal appeal to it. But anyway, let's give you a quick plot synopsis. Now, this is a movie that technically could fit in today because we are knee-deep in the world of the internet right now. And this movie came out in 2001 when the internet was in its earlier days. And you're going to hear that AOL sign-on little cue. But it's very ambitious and advanced in its approach to using technology, specifically the internet, in a modern horror film, and it works very well. So at the beginning of this movie, you get this character, Mishi. She is a botanist, a person who works with plants. She's got this business, and one of her employees, Taguchi, has been gone for a while, and she goes looking for him. And then when she finds him, he seems to be okay, but really quickly we realize that things are not okay at all. He was looking at this disc, and there was this really horrific image on the disc with this man that is uttering these words, "Help me," and it's just really hypnotic, and it consumes him. And so he eventually hangs himself. This is the beginning of the movie, okay? So this movie has a pretty somber intro, okay? And really, at the end of the day, it's two different parallel stories that kind of interject eventually. You get this student, Kawashima. He comes upon the disc, and he thinks he has like a virus. And so he goes to this IT specialist by the name of Haru. And so the two of them kind of team up together and try to figure out why this is all happening, and it's kind of the reverse of us logging into the internet. It's like the ghosts from this other plane are using the internet to kind of log into us. And there's this notion that's presented in the middle of the movie where there's only so many people on the earth, and eventually they die, and so there are far more souls ghosts roaming the earth than there are actual people. And when it eventually reaches critical mass, they are going to take over. This movie does get quite ambitious, and it builds to kind of an epic conclusion. It just feels like this movie could get bigger and bigger and bigger because of these circumstances. But the performances and the situation is kind of the antithesis of that, because it feels more small scale, which is great. But after Taguchi dies at the beginning of the movie, the character Mishi, she's also on her own path to try to figure out what's going on. Now, to get right down to it, when we're talking about horror, this movie is a lesson in why horror movies can be so effective and why they can work so well. And I think the best ones are the ones that don't just give you scares at face value and nothing else beneath the surface. No, this movie has layers upon layers upon layers beneath the surface if you want to go digging that far. And one thing I do love about Asian cinema is oftentimes they can be quite ambiguous. You can have your basic story there and you can figure out, what's going on. But there's a lot open for interpretation and theorizing, and you can just have really great discussions about these movies. I think that's why so many people love Asian cinema. Hell, so many people love anime, because these stories are limitless. They reach far outside of American bounds. Maybe that's why we try to adapt so many of these stories. There are some genuinely frightening moments throughout this movie, but it does not depend on them at all. The characters are so rich and so strong throughout, and they're just dealing with this nightmare that's going on. And really, I think one of the biggest themes about this movie is loneliness. And there's this moment in the movie where they talk about, what do these ghosts really want? Do they want to kill us? Or do they want us to kind of just soak in our own loneliness? It can be a head trip to the characters. And they go down kind of this mental abyss throughout the movie. Kiyoshi Kurosawa is a fantastic director. He's very practical in his approach to creating his scenes, and specifically creating a mood. Feels bleak and dark and just really, really heavy thematically. The cinematography is very muted throughout. You're rarely going to see bright colors in a movie like this. That's just to absorb you into that world that much better. And as far as like creating scares, Kurosawa might be one of the best, one of the most talented. And going into this movie, I'm already preconditioned to American horror films of this specific genre that constantly lean on those quick CGI jump scares. A character coming around a corner and then, a wallop over the head with a shovel, so to speak. And more times than not, it's stupid because it looks like a CGI effect, which ironically this movie deals with the internet. But it feels more analog, more practical in terms of how they achieved the effects to scare you in this movie. There is not a single jump scare in this. The horror is right there in your face gradually, and the camera doesn't cut away. There is a scene in this movie that is one of the most unique horror scenes I think I've ever seen, where you have this ghost that almost looks like a lava lamp. It starts out as just this character. I can't tell, it's androgynous kind of. I can't tell if it's a woman or a guy, but it's pretty much in black, and it's walking slowly towards one of these characters. And his body starts kind of bending and turning. And right away I was thinking of like movies like It Follows, and you can see where that movie kind of got its influence in terms of one of the scares in that movie, which is this female that's walking slowly towards Jay. Just a very similar effect here. And this is a movie that came out, 22 years ago. And I guarantee you there are countless American directors that have been influenced by filmmakers like Kurosawa. Asian filmmakers, I think, are just fearless. They will try anything, and they're so creative, and they oftentimes, more than not, achieve whatever it is they're trying to achieve, at least in terms of scaring an audience. But there's also like kind of an after effect to these scares in this movie. It lingers. Much like the movie itself, it kind of sucks a little bit of your soul out. After I watched this movie, it was just percolating in my head. and I wanted to throw it in again, and I literally watched the movie twice. It's also one of those movies where the music is strategically placed. It's not, you know, it's not one of those movies where you're going to hear just music all the way through. There are quiet moments throughout, and then there are moments where the music feels just very somber, emotional. It didn't have those cliche musical beats that we see in a lot of American films. And I know it sounds like I'm completely shitting on American horror when there are countless great American horror films, okay? But I guess I'm just kind of referencing the ones that don't necessarily work. And don't get me wrong, there's some chilling music in this movie, but it doesn't depend on a catalog of nothing but chilling musical beats, you know, because then it kind of dilutes itself. Also, can't not mention this one iconic scare where this character literally jumps from this tower. The camera never cuts away. And I know how the scene was achieved. You can read up on that yourself. Quite interesting, but I think it's better to go into it not knowing how it was achieved. That's all I'll say. It's one of those scenes where camera's right there. It doesn't actually jump over to scare you right when the event happens. No, a character is literally right there, and the victim is right behind her and literally leaps to her death. And it is chilling. Guys, I highly recommend this movie, PuLSe. It did make me curious to go and rewatch the remake just to kind of compare it. And I guess maybe give it another chance, even though I'm sure this movie's not going to be that good. I don't remember it being that good at all. But yeah, Trapped on an Island for PuLSe. Wow. Those Asian filmmakers, they know what they're doing. And this is my first Japanese horror film, I think. I've done quite a few South Korean horror films and some other Asian countries, but yeah, I need to get more into JHorror for sure. So anyway, guys, let me know down in the comments your thoughts on PuLSe. Looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day on Fridays. We do Free for Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on all my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Drumdum out.